Um, I'd like to start with, as everybody is aware of, that our economy has not been the greatest the last few years, and we've got a lot of people that are unemployed. And for many people, the great American dream of owning a nice house and a nice car, and sending your kids to a good school is fast diminishing. And even a lot of people that are very, very well educated, but they don't have any kind of marketable skills, find themselves in kind of dead-end jobs and not a whole lot of a future. So, as farriers, we are a very unique and lucky bunch because we have a very, very valuable service to sell. We have the opportunities of working in beautiful surroundings and nice stables, on beautiful horses. We have the advantage of being our own bosses. There's never any lack of challenge with the feet that we work on. And best of all, we have the opportunity for a very, very good income. So while we have this opportunity, it does not come automatically. Combined with hard work, it will equal success. And it's very, very important that we plan ahead and we don't screw it all up. I'd like to have a little bit of a disclaimer here that I'm not a financial wizard or a financial expert, but I've been around the block a few times, and what I want to share with you is some of the things that I've done myself and what I've learned from other people to make their businesses a success. One thing I have found out is that farriers are very, very good at sharing information about shoeing horses, and they will talk forever about shoeing horses. But when it comes to the financial stuff, you really, really have to pin them down and ask a lot of questions before they will kind of open up and talk about what they do with their businesses. So consequently, besides networking with other farriers, it's really important that you're going to have to spend a little bit of time with the books and read and study. In preparing for this webinar, I read several books, and this is one that really kind of struck me as maybe the best small-time operator. If you have some time, look through that. It has some very, very good information in it. What we're going to be discussing tonight are the tools that you can use to make your business a success. We're going to talk about setting up the business, protecting the business and yourself, and finally investing for retirement and beyond. One of the first things you have to learn to be successful in business is to learn how to delegate. There are some certain things that you're going to be doing in your business that you're probably better at than anyone else, like shoeing the horses. But for some of the business stuff, you really need to get help from outside sources that are much more in tune with it than you. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to assemble a team around you. They're going to include a certified public accountant, a good insurance man, a good financial advisor, and finally a good lawyer. So we'll start with setting up the business. The best thing you can do when you first start out is to hire a CPA who's familiar with the Farrier business. There's a lot to do in terms of taxes, as filing estimated taxes. If you're in a state that charges sales tax, it's very, very important that you collect these taxes and send them in on a regular basis. If you don't, the interest and penalties can really add up, and so that's really important that you stay current with all of the tax stuff. The same thing with the Social Security and the Medicare taxes. You have different options of how you want to set your business up with a sole proprietor or an LLC. Most people start out as a sole proprietor. When you're first starting out, most people don't have a whole lot of money or assets, and so it's very, very easy and very inexpensive to become a sole proprietor. Basically, all you have to do is get yourself a state tax number and a federal ID number, and you're pretty much set to go. The cons is that you're personally responsible for all debts and liabilities. So in the event that you're ever involved in a lawsuit of any kind, your personal assets would be at risk. As most people, businesses mature, I'm finding that a lot of farriers are now becoming a limited liability company. In effect, what you do is you create a company and you go to work for it. And so the the liability is limited to the company's assets, and it starts distancing you from that liability thing. The cons are that it requires professional help to set up, and tax filing is a little bit more complicated, but in the end, I think it's probably all worth it. The other thing you want to do is you want to adopt some kind of a system for keeping track of the horses and the receivables. What is the #1 complaint that clients have about farriers is that they don't show up. And so what you need is some kind of a system that will kind of keep track of everything. So find a system that works for you. Whoops. For years before computers came along, we all used paper ledger systems, and some people still do. The problem is that they are time-consuming, and they are not as complete as a computer system. Currently, there are several software programs on the market for farriers: Forge Ahead, Farriers Manager, EEDS, and Farriers Basic. What they all do is they offer trial programs. And so if you're interested in any of these, you can contact them, and everybody has a little bit different idea about what they like and don't like, and so they will let you try them at no charge. So how are you going to collect the money? I know a lot of farriers who won't shoe a horse unless the check or the cash is on the stall door. Other farriers are much more lenient about giving credit. They'll leave the stall, an invoice on the stall, or they will send them their invoice through the mail. But that is slowly going away. What I am seeing more and more are people who are correcting with credit cards, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. Because I think eventually cash and check are going away. That in our household here, we pay the majority of our bills electronically, and I think eventually that's what's going to happen with just about all things. So credit cards, how it works, it's a whole lot simpler than I ever thought it was. Basically, what you need to do is you can establish an account with a credit card servicing company. You can do this right online. The AAPF recommends a service called Phone Swipe. What you need to do then is give you your access to your checking account, and then they give you a password. And the nice thing about this is there's absolutely no application fee. It is all free. The next step is to get the credit card information from your clients. And then when you work on the horses to bill them, you can either swipe the card or key it in right on your cell phone. And in 2 days' time, the money will be in your account. The last step is to just send an email invoice to the client with details of the charge, and so they know exactly where that charge is coming from. The pros is you have your money in your account in 2 days, and the nice thing is that you never lose any money for non-payment, and you're not chasing people for your money. The cons are is you have to get the clients to agree to pay with their credit card. You have to get the information from them. And then you do have to pay a fee to the credit card company for each transaction, and currently that is 2.69%, which is pretty darn reasonable for what you're getting. If you have any questions, call Brian Quincy of the American Association of Professional Farriers, and he will kind of run you through it, and it's very, very easy. Keeping track of the money is always a problem. Again, back in the old days, we used a shoebox method where they had 2 boxes on the top of the refrigerator. One was for the bills to be paid. After you paid, you put them in the other box, and they sat there until tax time when you got them all out, and you sorted all through them, and it was a lot of work and a big headache. And the biggest problem is lots of times lots of things would kind of fall through the cracks and get lost. A better system is the business system that I use is QuickBooks, which is a household one, and the professional one is Quicken. What that does is allows you to keep track of every cent of your money. You can pay electronically, or you can print checks with it, and it's a very reliable and system, and with very, very good record keeping. The other nice thing about it, the interface is very nice with a tax program called TurboTax. And so at tax time, you can just download all of that money or all of that information into the TurboTax plan, and it makes tax time and filing much easier. So how do you keep as much of the money as you possibly can? That's by being a smart businessman. Because at the end of the year, it's not about how much you made, but how much you get to keep. So where does it all before you get yours? There are fixed expenses like your supplies, the cost of your truck and its maintenance, and all of the insurance premiums that are necessary for running your business. But where you can really make a difference in how much you get to keep is you're dealing with Uncle Sam and how much you're going to pay in taxes. And that's why you want to hire a good CPA who understands the ferry business, and so you can get all of your deductions. Someplace like H&R Block is probably not the place to go. Another thing you want to do is you want to keep very good records of your expenses. What I have found out that a credit card actually works the best. I use Visa and American Express. They both come back. The ones that we have a cashback provision, so I get anywhere from 1 to 5% discount on every purchase I make, depending on what it is. And the nice thing is at the end of the month, what they do is they send you a statement with all of the stuff itemized, and so you can really keep track of where your money is going. So at the end of each year, make it a priority to do a net worth review of all your assets and investments, and that way you can keep track of exactly how you're doing and whether you're progressing or not meeting your goals. This is also a good time to give yourself a raise in pay. It was a policy of mine that every January 1st I raise my prices. Currently, inflation is at about 1.5%. And so effectively, if you did not give yourself a raise in pay and you're going to keep the same prices as last year, effectively what you've done is you just take a 1.5% decrease in pay. I have never found that raising my prices in small increments has been a problem with my clients. Where people get in troubles where they don't raise their prices for 2 or 3 years, and then they find they're way behind everybody else, and they have to raise it like 6, 8, 10%, and that's when customers kind of take notice and sometimes they complain. So give those little raises, yourself a raise that every January 1st. Protecting the business and yourself. We're going to talk about the evils of insurance. One thing that's kind of interesting is what do you think the #1 reason why people declare bankruptcy? It is not wild women in fast cars or slow horses or fancy boats or lavish lifestyles. It is the inability to pay medical bills. So we'll talk a little bit about health insurance and the options. And everybody, when they say health insurance, a lot of the comments is, oh God, it's so expensive and I can't afford it. That's why I don't have it. Well, the truth is that it is affordable. It is all about how much you want to have in the way of deductibles and how much coverage you want to have. That if you want to have the whole enchilada and have complete coverage, yes, it can be very expensive. If you're reasonable about taking a reasonable deductible, it becomes a whole lot more affordable. What you do want to do is protect yourself against one of those train wreck catastrophic events in your life, like a serious auto accident or a very bad illness, one that could land you in the hospital and cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills. And this is something that has a potential to wipe you out and stay with you for the rest of your life. So for that, what you need is a catastrophic health insurance plan. You get one with high deductibles that make them very, very affordable, and it is very, very necessary for you to have them. If there's anything I want you to maybe take away from this webinar, it's the fact that how important it is to have good health insurance. The other thing is you need also is good liability insurance. We're working in a society today where a lot of the people are not the old-time horse owners. If something happens to the horses, they are not slow about wanting to find somebody to blame, somebody to sue. There are a lot of contractors' liability policies out there. Unfortunately, probably a lot of those are not going to cover you in the event of a horse wreck. What I would suggest is probably going to Markel Insurance Company. They are the only ones that I'm aware of that has a liability policies directly applicable to Farriers. And the event that you would have a claim against you, they have a very good track record of coming to your aid. The same thing with vehicle insurance is make sure that you have a commercial policy. What you'll have to do is you have to be very, very upfront with your insurance carrier when you're getting your insurance, and let them know exactly what you're doing, what you're carrying that truck, where you're going, because what'll possibly happen if you don't do that, if you do have a claim, what they'll do is they'll deny you because you weren't forthcoming with the application, and so that's something where you don't want to find yourself involved in. Disability insurance is something maybe that is good for you early in your career when you don't have a whole lot of assets. Is it a good use of money? That's debatable. I think maybe an emergency savings account is better. That way what you're doing is you're accumulating the money instead of paying the premiums, which are gone forever. If you have dependents, make sure that you have either life or term insurance in the event that you would no longer be in the picture. So investing for retirement and beyond is a tricky subject because retirement can be here before you know it. That's exactly what happened to me. So how much savings is enough? Well, it kind of depends on how well you want to live. If this is your idea of a happy retirement, you probably don't need that much. If you want to have a nice house and a nice property and really enjoy life, you're probably going to need a little bit more. So having savings of 8 times your net income is a common rule of thumb. So you guys can do the math and take it from there and figure out exactly how much you're going to maybe want in retirement. You want to observe the 3 rules of saving and investing for retirement. The #1 rule is to start savings now. 1 horse a week is a good start. It's really amazing what the power of compounding will do, and so starting early is paramount. What you want to do is you want to take advantage of the sheltered income plans around it. The traditional IRA is a very, very good one. You put pre-tax money into it, and at the end, when you draw it out, what you do is you pay taxes on it then. The Roth IRA is a little bit different. What you do is you contribute post-tax money, and then as you draw it out, you do not pay any tax on it at all. It's all yours to keep. That's something you could discuss with your financial advisors about what way you want to go. At the beginning of the month, a good policy is to pay yourself first. What I did is I always had a monthly automatic deduction from my checking account. I had 6 different mutual funds, and that really worked well for me. I never saw the money, I never missed it, and it was it really worked well for building for my retirement. I'd like to introduce you to the concept of delayed gratification. That is living a few years of your life like most people won't. That is that saving and living simply and putting money away for retirement, so that at the end you can spend the rest of your life living like most people can't. Okay, the #2 rule of investing is if you don't know what you're doing, get honest professional help. I like this quote by Will Rogers, your favorite of mine. He said, "I am not so concerned about the return on my money, but the return of my money." We've all been around unscrupulous horse traders and know all of their tricks. Well, financial advisors are pretty much of the same breed, and so you really have to be careful who you put your money with. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Grab your money and run. This guy is Bernie Madoff. In 2008, he managed to swindle 4,800 people out of $64 billion, that's $1 billion. And the reason he was able to do that is that the people were so greedy that he was offering 15 to 20% return on their money. And so they neglected to heed the 3rd rule of investing, which is to diversify. Traditionally, savings accounts and CDs were a very, very good safe investment. They paid reasonable interest. That is no longer the case. Right now, they're barely paying anything. Treasury bills and bonds are somewhat better, but again, they're just barely keeping up with inflation, and you're not going to get very far using them. The vast majority of retirement money is invested in the stock market, either in stocks or mutual funds. Investing in real estate, especially your home, is probably one of the very, very best investments you can make. Rental property is also good. I was surprised talking to different farriers about the number of farriers that have rental property. And the disadvantages of those is that you have to manage them, and you have to make sure that when you buy them, they're good quality properties. Otherwise, the things can go south. Whatever you do, do not invest in horses. I can tell you all kinds of horror stories about things going wrong. There's an old saying about how the only two things in life are certain in life are death and taxes. Well, we've talked about taxes a little bit, so we'll take on death. There are 3 documents that you should have in place no matter what your age. One is a living will, which is a directive to the medical personnel in the event that you would end up comatose or brain dead. It has to do with whether you want to be put on life support and those things. If you don't have these in place, it can get real sticky in the event of a tragedy. Another thing you want to do is you want to have someone appointed with the power of attorney to conduct business for you in the eventuality that you would not be able to do it yourself. And the third is that you would have in place a last will and testament. That if you die without a will, every state has its own rules about how it's going to divide your estate, and it's probably not going to be exactly as you probably would have wished. Plus, it's going to be expensive. So get a will and make sure that it's in force. The last thing I wanted to talk about is possibly establishing an irrevocable trust for your estate. There are several advantages to doing this. One is that it bypasses probate and keeps your estate intact and saves you just a ton of money at the end of your life. So we're going to take a few questions here and talk about what we've missed. Thank you for your kind attention, and we'll kind of turn it over to Jeremy, and we'll take some questions.
Thanks, Red, and a lot of great information there. We do have quite a few questions. While I go through some of these, I encourage everybody type in your question, even if it's something Red didn't address. And Red, you talked about BRYAN and the AAPF. They came here at a moment's notice when they heard you talking about them. So joining me here in the office are Brian Quincy, Dave Farley, and Roy Bloom from the AAPF, CAPF. And
great. If you have any questions about the credit card, we'll just put Brian right on the line.
All right. Hey, so a couple questions that came up, Red, were about raising your prices. So first one, you kind of said every January. Do you recommend yearly, or do you have another? How often, I guess, would you suggest people raise their rates?
I did it annually. Every January 1st, I went up anywhere from 2 to 5%, depending on how the economy was doing. And my people expected it, and I never had any problem. But again, that kind of depends upon what you're charging currently and where you want to go. But I've heard of other people doing it every 6 months, but I always just did it every January 1st.
Okay. How did you introduce that to your clients? Is like, say you didn't have one before, how would you introduce a price increase to them?
Actually, I didn't at all. I did not make a big deal of it. When they got the bill for the new shoeing after January 1st, there was an increase. They paid the bill, and nothing was ever said.
Okay. Earlier, you had mentioned that not to use a company like H&R Block. Of those big companies, or I guess, who would you suggest other than maybe a private CPA, or is that kind of your limitation?
I would definitely suggest a private CPA, especially one who who's worked for other farriers in the past, generally there's somebody in the horse community that kind of fills this bill. And so the thing is to network with other farriers and find out who they used in the past and how satisfied with them. And generally you'll be do pretty well going with the recommendation from another farrier.
Okay. So, there's a lot of options out there for savings and building for your retirement. If you're young and you want to have a very modest start to that, if you could pick one way to do it, what would you recommend?
There are a number of index funds in the mutual fund families. If you want to have an account where you're not keeping track of it and they keep expenses very low, that is the way to go. There's the Russell 500, the S&P, or the Russell 2000, the S&P 500. All of those are very, very safe, and the rate of return is very good. In fact, lots of times at the end of the year, it comes out better than a lot of the directed funds.
Okay. Going to the credit cards, do you add a fee to the credit card, or do you absorb it into your overall price for the credit card fee?
No, I don't. I never. I don't recommend adding it. What you're going to do is you're probably going to absorb it. But the thing is, you want to have your prices high enough where you can do that easily. But no, I would not. I would not have a policy that if you're with cash one price and credit card the next. That just gets way confusing. In fact, what you want to do is you want to encourage people to pay with their credit card.
Yeah. And another cautionary thing about that, a lot of state laws prohibit you from charging extra for your credit card fees. Okay. Here's an interesting one. I have one person I've seen do this, but have you ever seen Farrier accept PayPal, Red?
No, I have not. I wasn't aware that was possible. I'm not quite sure what would go into setting a system like that up, but I don't know anything about it, so I guess I'd have to kind of pass on that question.
Yeah, I've only seen one farrier offer that, and I suppose it's just is there become different ways that we can collect money, and I'd maybe suggest that maybe anything other than Bitcoin.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I have you guys here, Dave. How interesting thing you do. You have a sort of a letter that you give clients. Could you talk about that a little bit and how you might talk about price increases with your clients?
Yeah, we send out an annual letter, usually at the end of the season, and explaining or actually thanking everybody for the business. And we mention it at that time that we have an price increase, and like Red says, it always stays around 5% to keep up with the annual inflation.
Hey, Red, how would you handle it if you got some bounce back from a client? Like they said, hey, why are you raising your rates?
I have had that happen, and what I did is I went back home and I made a list of all the things that I spend money on, what makes it possible for to shoe their horse. Includes that truck, all of the equipment in it, the salaries of my employees, and you start itemizing all of these things and the taxes that you have to pay, and you can make the customer understand that the money that they're paying is not money that I'm going to take to the grocery store. That there are a lot of expenses that come out of that cost of shoeing that horse that they're really not aware of until you point them out. And generally, that's enough to kind of convince them that you're worth what you're charging.
Yeah, and you certainly don't want to sell yourself short. Always include what you're paying to continue your education, whether it's being a member of the American Association of Professional Farriers or attending the International Healthcare Summit, because the education you're receiving is providing a better service for your clients. Let's talk about some other fees, and you guys can jump in on this too, the guys here in the office. Did you ever have a barn call fee or talk about your pricing structure, Red?
Um, what I did is my pricing structure was basically time and materials. That I had a reset price for a horse and a trimming price, and that was based on a horse that would stand in the cross ties, and we could work on it safely and quietly. If the horse was obstreperous and difficult to work on, then that would be an increased charge for that horse. The same thing was true with any shoes or pads or any repairs that you had to do that all went on top of the price. My policy also too is that as I got farther away from home, rather than charging a trip charge, my basic reset price became more, and so it was quite a bit different from horses that were right around the corner to the one that I had that was 100 miles away, and that worked pretty well. I never like to kind of nickel and dime my people to death, in terms of trying to divide trip charges and all that stuff.
Okay. And can you guys add anything to that? How you bill?
We're pretty spoiled with our business. It seems to be in the same area, but what we do is we travel a lot, so our prices stay the same, and we actually charge all of our expenses when we travel. So, and we list those, we itemize those out for wherever we are, and it's added to the price of each horse.
Now, just for some clarification, when you guys talk about inflation and how much you raise, are you trying to cover beyond what the current rate of inflation is, or are you strictly looking at inflation? Because there is some variation in what you guys are talking about. Where Red, you said 1.5%, Dave, you said 5%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I try
I
to
don't think.
include inflation as well as my cost of supplies, which will fluctuate between different states. I don't really include the price increases in my supplies and inflation. I figure those two as separate, but most of the time your supplies will go up 2 to 3% every year, and several ways to figure that, but I add that onto it. But I think 5% is just a safe area for me to be in, and it also that covers the increasing cost of the credit cards and fuel prices also.
Red, what do you think about that?
Yeah, one of the things that is, especially if you've been in business for a while and you're more and more experienced, and so what you need to do is you need to be charging a little bit more for that all that education that we were talking about, and so consequently, I think it's important that you keep increasing your prices and stay ahead of the people at the lower rungs and kind of give them a little something to achieve in time, when it's their time to charge a bit more.
Okay. Aside from savings, are there any financial options you might suggest for like a beginning farrier to pay for continuing education, whether that means a clinic, anything where there might be a lot of distance traveled and really don't happen all that often?
Oh boy, when you first start out in business, what you have to be is very, very frugal and very, very careful with your money. Um, we were talking about delayed gratification. There's so many things and toys out there that people want to have, and so you really have to kind of tighten your belt sometimes and make do with what you got and prioritize. I mean, especially continuing education is a real priority, when it comes time to spending your money, and so what you have to do is make it a priority to spend less than you're making, and put some of it away and use it to its best advantage.
I know in the case of the International Healthcare Summit, there have been some farriers who send a letter to their clients explaining why they're going there, what the benefits will be for their horses, and kind of what their costs are associated with that, and have been able to raise some money that way from their clients. But I think that option works because you're explaining a clear benefit to both the owner and their horses.
Yeah, I've never gone to any of my clients and solicited money. But one thing that I have done is that when I started, I used to bill all my clients, and one of the things that I had on my statements was a little bit of a little newsletter. And so at the whenever I would attend any kind of an educational event, I would inform my clients that I just got back from Cincinnati to Healthcare Summit, and I learned all kinds of interesting, amazing stuff. And now I was a whole lot better farrier than I was. And so they kind of keep this in mind, you know, and that's when it comes to raising your prices. They're really aware of the fact that you're taking use of continuing education, and consequently it kind of elevates you in their eyes.
All right, we talked a little bit about invoicing. I'll ask you this first, Red, and then ask you, Dave. Do you charge extra for things like pulling clips? And if so, how much?
No, simply because of the fact that I rarely do. I haven't drawn any clips in the last several years, simply because I use all pre-clip shoes. But no, I never wanted to kind of nickel and dime the customer to death, you know, like another dollar for drawing or stuff like that. That was just always included in the price of shoes.
Yeah. What about you, Dave?
No, the same for us. We had a standard fee that we charged, and if we used bar shoes, pads, something like that, it was added, but no modifications to the shoes.
And then, did you ever have you talked about price structure, Red. Was that an even thing right across the board, or would you charge a little bit more for certain horses, or did you ever have a different strategy?
Oh, definitely. I charge more for different horses. You know, if the thing is, what you're doing is when you're resetting or trimming everything, what you're doing is you're selling your time. And if you're going to be putting more time, especially on a difficult horse, one that's really obstreperous, or one that really has issues with his feet where you have to really take a lot more time, yeah, then that horse is going to cost a whole lot more to be shot. And it was very, very common where I would have, say, in a barn about 30 horses, there would be like 4 or 5 different prices, all of it depending upon that particular horse. And sometimes it had to do with how fast the client paid. And so there are all kinds of factors that you kind of enter into it.
Yeah, and hand in hand, things you normally wouldn't do. What about that? Like consulting with a vet, or things that are related to your work, but maybe more along the lines of consultations. How would you charge for those?
That is something that really needs to be addressed, because whenever you're consulting with a vet, yeah, it takes a lot of extra time. And again, that was something that I normally did not charge for. But in hindsight, I probably should. The only time I worked for a vet clinic for a number of years, and that was there I charged by the hour, simply because there was a lot of interaction between the vets and myself, and so it was impossible to charge a standard fee there. And so that was kind of a little bit different situation.
Okay, and then we'll have a couple more questions. So if there's something that's really has your interest, be sure to type it in, and we'll get it into Red. Going back to those difficult horses, Red, at what point do you declare to the client their horse is difficult and would charge them more to shoe it?
My policy was that I would always give a horse a fair chance. I like to, most of the horses I worked on sometimes for years at a time, and so it was my best interest to make friends with them and get them trained to stand. With some horses, they were a little bit mentally unstable, and you really had to take a lot of extra time. I tried not to use tranquilizers unless I absolutely had to. And then any time a tranquilizer was used, and then that would be an increased cost too, because you're waiting for the tranquilizer to take effect, and plus you're putting yourself at risk anytime you're working on a tranquilized horse.
Okay. In this question, I've been waiting for this one, and Did you ever concern yourself with what other farriers in your area were charging?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of keep track of what everybody's doing. When I was up and coming, my mentor was the highest priced farrier in the area, and all of us young whippersnappers coming up behind him probably stayed, like $5 or $10 behind him to just be respectful. And eventually he retired, and I became the old timer, and so I was at the top of the heap. And so yeah, you have to kind of keep aware of what other people are charging. Um, and it's I'm from the Milwaukee area. We never ever kind of kept it secret what we were charging. Everybody knew what was up, but you never want to be the lowest price guy, and I always wanted to be the highest price.
And yeah, I guess that was sort of your philosophy. You know, do you ever see a problem with being so fixated on it, or I suppose if somebody's trying to determine how much they should charge, what advice would you have on comparing yourself with other farriers?
You know, in approaching that, what to charge, I think you probably want to go somewhere in the center. When you're first starting out, you don't want to be the highest price probably, and you don't want to be the lowest. And so you can find out pretty quickly what people are charging and kind of put yourself in that middle ground. But you definitely don't want to be known as the cheapest guy around, because then what you're going to do is you're going to get all of the price conscious people, and generally those are not very good customers.
Okay. And while I have you here, Brian, I'll put you on the spot. We're talking about protecting and maximizing income by joining the AAPF, CAPF. What are some ways that you guys can help with that?
Well, obviously, this issue on credit cards, we want to be able to help. We want to be able to provide a contact or a resource that if there are issues, in which we know there will be, it's inevitable, but we offer the service of for our members. If they'll call us and let us know there's an issue, we'll be glad to be the ombudsman for them. Go to the credit card company and try to work out a solution. Other things that we do include being there for the member and just trying to provide services that they need. You mentioned a moment ago about the letter that Dave Farley offers to his clients and asks them to sign, that gives them authorization to use a credit card. Dave and his wife Karen have provided that form to us, and so we have now made it available to our members so that they can go onto our website and download the form, replace Dave's name or the blank name with their name, and then distribute that form to their customers, which then gives them the authorization to use the credit card.
Okay, I got one last question for you, Red. How would you handle last-minute cancellations?
Last minute what?
Cancellations.
I would be happy. I always, part of the problem is that we think that we have to be working, day and night, and so when it was a situation where I could get a little bit of extra time to myself, I embraced it and ran with it. I would not be unhappy at all.
I've got a couple more, and if you're in high demand, would you keep pushing up your charges?
Oh, definitely. You know what? One of the worst things you can do is have the word out there that you're not accepting clients anymore, and so when people do call and they want you to shoot their horses, what you do is you shoot them a price that's going to be probably higher than your standard price, and so consequently, if they still want you to come and do the horses, what you've just gotten as a client at the maximum rate. And then what you want to do is you want to start looking at your client list and start looking down at the very, very bottom in which clients you could probably do without. And so kind of that's one way of weeding the garden and improving the quality of your client list.
Okay. All right. Well, Red, I want to thank you for your time. You did another terrific job with the webinar and gave us a lot of information. So thanks again for your hard work with that.
You're very welcome, and thank you. It was a pleasure.